Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the absolute most captivating survival stories in human history. We're looking at a tiny nation that essentially became the ultimate geopolitical underdog. And more importantly, we're going to see what their incredible 1,000-year survival masterclass can teach the rest of us about the sheer power of leverage. Let me ask you this. How exactly does a country of just 468 square kilometers survive, getting squeezed between two massive historical superpowers for 1,000 years? It doesn't just happen by accident, that's for sure. The Andorrans carefully navigated their survival through extreme geography, incredibly clever governance, and a strict, unwavering neutrality. Section 1. The Mountain Microstate, a geographic fortress. To really understand Andorra's survival, we have to look at the extreme physical reality of the land itself.
468. That is the entire landmass of Andorra in square kilometers. To put that into perspective, it's roughly 30 kilometers long and maybe 15 kilometers wide at its absolute broadest point. Now, in the grand sweep of history, a territory this compact would normally be an incredibly easy target. They'd just get absorbed by a larger neighbor. But this land had a secret weapon.
And that secret weapon was extreme verticality. We aren't just talking about a small, flat patch of land. The average altitude is a staggering 1,990 meters. With the highest peak towering at nearly 3,000 meters, early inhabitants, whose roots stretch all the way back to the Bronze and Iron Ages, were essentially shielded inside a giant natural vault. You have deep ravines, roaring torrents, and heavy winter snows serving as this massive isolating barrier. It formed a highly defensible, protective cradle for the roughly 84,000 people who live across its 7 historic parishes today. Section 2, forged by feudal powers, the ultimate geopolitical hack. Because while the mountains kept them physically safe, a highly unique political structure became their true shield. Okay, get this. Andorra is a co-principality, which means it boasts one of the most unusual leadership arrangements on Earth. It literally has 2 heads of state. The Bishop of Urgell over in Spain, and the French president. Yes, you heard that right. A Spanish bishop and the president of France share a throne to rule over a tiny mountain. Because these 2 powers shared authority, a delicate, almost standoff-like balance developed. Neither France nor Spain could ever fully conquer or annex the territory without triggering a massive conflict with the other one. This geopolitical hack built up over centuries. It actually started back in 843 AD when Charles the Bald granted lands in the eastern Pyrenees to the Bishop of Urgell to protect against invading Moors. Fast forward to 1179 and the Valley Council is formed, effectively recognizing Andorra as an independent state. By 1266, the joint co-princedom between the bishop and the Count of Foix was officially constructed. This arrangement essentially locked in their borders forever by keeping their much larger neighbors in a permanent deadlock. The Andorrans also lean heavily on an amazing local legend. According to their oral history, Charlemagne's nephew, the paladin Roland, rescued the Andorrans from the Saracens. In return for their help, Charlemagne supposedly granted them a charter of freedom, declaring they might freely, quote, choose boys from among themselves to govern. While historians rigorously debate the exact origins of this charter, honestly, it doesn't matter. This exalted pedigree totally fueled their deeply rooted, fiercely independent identity. Section 3. Navigating global conflicts, the neutral tightrope. So, how do you survive the brutal, mechanized wars of the 19th and 20th centuries when you literally have no standing army? The answer is strict, unwavering neutrality. Andorra leveraged its extreme isolation to position itself as an essential buffer zone. Paris and Madrid both quickly realized that actually occupying Andorra would cause significantly more strategic headaches than it was worth. In geopolitics, this is known as an equilibrium nation. By being equally useless to both sides as a staging ground, they became totally invaluable as a neutral middle ground. But wow, was it a terrifying balancing act. During World War I, blocked access forced Andorra to rely entirely on French mountain passes, with the League of Nations practically appointing France to strictly monitor their neutrality. During the Spanish Civil War in 1939, General Franco ordered the sealing of the borders, and a commando of Spanish policemen tragically murdered more than 200 individuals right on the Spanish side of the line. And in World War II, as German forces invaded neighboring countries, Andorran authorities had to execute some incredibly tense diplomatic maneuvering just to maintain their sovereignty and keep the violence out of their valleys. Section 4. The modern economic miracle: snow, shopping, and sovereignty. Following World War II, this isolated little refuge pulled off a radical pivot. The result of that pivot was a total economic transformation. A massive 80% of Andorra's modern GDP now relies completely on tourism. Back in the 1950s and 60s, they partnered with French economists, aggressively modernized their roads, leaned heavily into their tax privileges, and built a booming economy designed entirely around attracting outside visitors and capital.
And the financial success is staggering. Today, Andorra boasts a per capita income of around $37,000. For a country that spent over a millennium as a rugged, historically isolated agricultural community, this is an absolute economic miracle. They effectively turned their snowy isolation into a highly premium commodity.
So what actually draws these millions of tourists up the mountain every year? Well, they completely transformed those snowy peaks into over 300 kilometers of connected ski slopes across massive areas like Gran Valira and Val Nord. They commercialized their unique cultural heritage, offering incredible local cuisine like escudella la meat stew and trinchat vegetable stew. All of this is beautifully managed across their 7 historical parishes, blending deep ancient history with high-end modern luxury. Section 5. Future of the Principality, the 21st century crossroads. Success brings entirely new challenges, and this rapidly expanding microstate is facing some severe growing pains.
A critical turning point occurred recently in 1993. This was the year Andorra finally passed its first codified constitution, abandoning the old traditional laws and officially joining the United Nations as a fully recognized sovereign state. They stepped onto the global stage as equals, but of course that meant taking on entirely new global responsibilities.
Stepping onto that global stage meant facing some really tough modern realities. Geographically, those exact same mountains that protected them from invaders now physically trap severe CO2 pollution down in the valleys. And it's crazy, data suggest up to 2/3 of that pollution just drifts in from Spain and France. Socially, the rapid development has caused a jarring shift from a traditional rural community straight into individualist capitalism, bringing modern issues like crime, budget cuts affecting vulnerable retirees, and new concerns over substance abuse. On top of all that, they are in a fierce battle to adapt their education system to a digital, globalized world so their youth aren't left behind. Which leaves us with a truly profound question. For 1,000 years, Andorra's leaders have been absolute masters of adjustment. They survived the Moors, feudal lords, the Spanish Civil War, and both world wars simply by knowing exactly how to balance external pressures. But as it nears its 1,000th anniversary, will Andorra's delicate balancing act survive the invisible borders of the climate and digital revolutions? It's a pretty fascinating challenge for the ultimate geopolitical survivor. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.